G'day and welcome to another edition of Talk of the Town, but it ain't just another edition. It's a grand final edition. I'm in a Channel 9 cameraman's car on the way to Geelong where they're celebrating being back in a grand final. And in Adelaide is the Port Adelaide Premiership champion, Warren Tredrea. G'day.
How are you, Sebastian? And I do like the poo on your window, so at least you could do is clean your car before you go down to Geelong and celebrate what could be the premiers this year.
Look at that. Can you see the poo? Where's the poo gone? I can't quite make it
Right
out.
there.
Anyway, a man who never dishes up fecal matter is the chief football reporter of the Nine Network. Hello, Sam McClure.
I'll tell you what, it's a classy start from you two, but I'm feeling a little bit flaggy because Tredders is in South Australia, which I think Tredders is basically free. You're a COVID normal, you can move around. Tredders is, Seb's actually in a car moving around. Just tell me what that feels like, Seb, if you can, to actually get in a car and go further than 5 kilometres. And I'm still locked at home, trying to pretend to get excited about a grand final, which I have to watch by myself.
Yeah, well, part of me wants to stay because Geelong, of course, people might not know that Victoria restrictions are divided into regional and metropolitan. So Geelong is in the regional part of the rules, which means Cats fans will be able to sort of party in a way that Richmond fans won't be back in town.
So, Seb, can you just stop there at some stage, have a pot and maybe a Palmer and just send a photo? Don't worry about Tredders, just send it to me.
I think I'm very capable of doing that. Gentlemen, let us start with what was probably one of the more explosive interviews we've seen in football. Stephen Silvagni, arguably, some might consider him the greatest blue of all time. He's certainly amongst their handful of greatest ever players. And the way he left was always with question marks and controversy. This morning, he's gone on radio on SEN, and he's had this to say about his recent exit as list manager from the Carlton Football Club.
What hurt you the most about that departure, looking back?
What hurt me the most? Probably when your president has a chat to you and he says, I've fought for you, that the CEO said to him that he felt as though I would sabotage the trade and draft period. And that probably hurt me the most, knowing that, and I hate talking about myself, to be perfectly honest, but when you've played for a club for 17 years and I think you put your body on the line and supported the club all your life, for a person to actually say you'll sabotage the trade and draft period, and really for me, an outsider that's come into the club and really doesn't know a lot about the club and really doesn't know a lot about me, that was probably the most disappointing out of everything that happened.
Yeah, so, I mean, explosive stuff is the correct word that you just used, Seb, and there's a fair bit in that. Not only did he call the way that the club handled his exit as disrespectful, which I don't think Tredders and Seb came as a massive surprise to a lot of people who had followed it, particularly a lot of Carlton people who had followed it. The biggest claim in that is that the CEO, Kane Little, according to Silvagni's accusation, basically told the president that he wanted him gone because he was scared that he was going to sabotage, that was the quote and the word he used, sabotage the upcoming draft and the upcoming trade period. I mean, that is a massive allegation. And whether it is absolutely what he said or not, it speaks to the disharmony inside that football club at the time. Now, Tredders, we're speaking to you guys late on a Wednesday morning when we're recording. I would think that the Carlton Football Club has to respond to this. Now, some people would sit there and say, hang on, we don't have to respond to everyone that criticises us. But this ain't anyone. As Seb just said, maybe the greatest blue of all time, certainly on the pedestal of the highest esteem, with Kernahan, with Nichols, with Bradley, with Judd. I've probably missed a couple there. But this guy's the fullback of the century for the club, for goodness sake.
Yes.
He's 3 generations of Arnie's there. I mean, this is a nightmare for the Blues.
Yeah, it is a nightmare, but at the end of the day, it also shows that there's been a breakdown of relationship. And I've sat back and I look at what happened at North Melbourne. I got some information to suggest that what the recent list changes, or not list changes, but coaching changes, weren't necessarily done by the footy department. So it's not the first time, and it won't be the last time. But what it does do is it actually shows that the club is not united. So the good clubs, can you see this happening at Richmond right now? Can you see this happening with Geelong? And when we know that Cameron wants to go to Geelong, arguably the best forward in the game, yeah, he has a little out of form this year, but you don't do that. And clearly it's a breakdown, as I said before, of relationships between a CEO who's come in from Richmond and also a former favourite son who has done a pretty good job job in building their list. So he's moved on. Clearly, he's got an axe to grind. He hasn't held back. Sauce never holds back, so that's what we love about him. But it does give you a great insight, and I do agree with some of the points he makes. You know, he talks in that interview about bringing Eddie Betts in, arguably on more money. We assume that is on Kate Simpson, which makes sense because Eddie leaves in free agency for better opportunities. Simpson sticks around. They're at the bottom of the ladder or roundabouts rebuilding, and is he actually earning less money? So I can understand that point. He makes a very valid point. That's how football clubs now, and particularly good clubs like Richmond and teams who want to keep players around, you offer them longer term, slightly less money, you look after them long term. All that's valid, but it does tell me that there's a massive breakdown in relationships, and it's fair to say no Christmas cards will be headed either way from either Kane Little or the former list manager that is, and Stephen Silvagni.
Sam, I don't ask you this because you're a Carlton fan. I ask you this because you understand the club's history, you understand what certain figures mean to the club. You know, if this sort of civil war, for want of a better expression, sees Kane Little and Mark Lejudice on one side and Stephen Silvagni on the other, where do Carlton people have their support?
Yeah, it's a great question, Seb, and a lot of people would be on Silvagni's side because of what he's provided to that footy club. But just to expand on Treddy's point, good footy clubs do not operate like this. Now, whether Kane Little, who is the CEO, by the way, he's the boss, right? Silvagni has to answer to him. If he feels that the best direction for that club is for Stephen Silvagni not to be the list manager anymore, fine. You make the calls. I don't think anyone would begrudge that. But you have to treat them with respect on the way out. This guy has been a legend of the club since he was about 16. Since even before that, when, you know, like his father before him, Serge, was dominating for the footy club. Whether you want him out or not is on one side of the argument. It's how you handle it. Throw a press conference, throw a party, have a week of the social media team doing highlights of Sauce, the best deals he made as list manager. Whether you had a disagreement or not, businesses have disagreements all the time. But the best ones say, yes, we don't want you here because we feel it's better for the business, and ultimately we answer to the fans. But you've done a lot for this footy club, and so we respect you on the way out. This hasn't happened, and you know what? It could have been dealt with 12 months ago. But here we are, you know, in a paid interview. He's poured acid on the club, really, and it's going to hurt the footy club. And all the Carlton fans sitting out there now will be saying, did we make the right call? Why is our club operating like this? It's not what the Carlton Football Club needed going into their most important year since probably 1999.
That's interesting that it's a paid interview. I hadn't quite been conscious of that at this point. But, Tredders, I want you to sort of reflect on this. Perhaps the bit that got me as a football lover was when Silvagni said that, you know, he hated talking about himself as a Carlton person because of all that he's achieved, needs to speak for itself. But in terms of, how do you go when you are a great of the club and you feel like the club has hurt you? I'm not necessarily saying it's happened to you, but how do you reflect on Sauce being put in that position?
Oh, I guess anyway, as soon as you step into the role as list manager now, 10 years ago, there weren't list managers. There was a footy manager and a recruiting manager. Now, the exorbitant amount of money, and I'm not being disrespectful to people in those roles, but clubs seriously have beefed up in the old school of Moneyball to try and find the next recruit to get the point of difference, and that includes list managers, recruiters, scouts, people jumping out of bushes, watching players. Can't hide them anymore. Used to send them off to country footy and hide them in that system. But I would suspect that this is, as I said before, it's just a breakdown of relationships. And for me, the bit is it doesn't sit right. But don't make no mistake, list managers don't always get their way. So Sauce clearly looks like he didn't get his way on this one, but he's thrown the acid and thrown the bucket on the way out. And I can understand because he's clearly got an axe to grind. But there's always people that go, Kevin Bartlett, I don't know the story behind that one, but for a long period of time, he wasn't under the realms of the footy club. And to be honest, when you're so close to a club, you love your club. Yes. So and you find often, and I find this in the media, you're actually harder on your own club because you care more. And then people accuse you of not being in the club. And then you're accused, if you actually don't go hard enough, you're accused of being biased. So no matter what he does, it's going to be judged. The fact is he was a legend at that club. If he was list manager, and as he was at the Giants for a period of time, and if he stayed there for 15 years, people are saying, why don't you go back to Carlton and help? Well, you can't win either way. So I suspect that because he played there, he's been list manager there, and he's actually spoken negatively of the place. And as Sam touched on before, this stuff happens all the time, but it rarely gets airtime. And that's the big bit here.
Before we move on, Tredders, did you ever stand next to the number one of the navy blue one-on-one there in the goal square?
Yeah, I did. And, it was a wonderful experience. I was pushing him. The ball was coming in high and long. I thought he's moving here. And then I realised it was only his top half of his body moving. His legs didn't move at all. So he is a nightmare to play on. Used to try and get him on the run, but it didn't work because every ball that come in long and high, you just go, you just have it here, mate, and I'll wait until I come back in 5 years' time with some meat on my body.
Did you ever get hold of him once?
What was that, sorry?
Did you ever get hold of him once? Did you ever kick a few on him?
No, I kicked a bag early days, but he was out injured. So I think he was breathing fire from that moment. I had Peter Dean and Glenn Manton early days. But, yeah, let's just say that return bout at Footy Park, some about 10 rounds later, ended up Tredrea goalless. Not good.
The big zero.
Not goals. No,
can I just say, as a football lover, I love nothing more than listening to power forwards talk about days where they kick big bags.
Definitely.
It is just.
Well, if we've got time,
Yep.
I did mention Manton and Peter Dean. It was 8-4 in my 7th game.
Oh,
but
12 scoring shots.
My 17th game was Globes.
We were going so well, Sid. We were going so well until you.
Yeah, we were too until you rocked up in that cardy. So, but we're okay. We're a happy bunch, Smob.
Nice, isn't it? It's nice.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, boy.
My grandfather would be so proud.
8-4. That is a nice day at the office. Anyway, let's move on to free agency. Sam, you're our newsbreaker. Jeremy Cameron declaring he wanted to be a cat has sent shivers down the spine of back sixers around the competition. But we did talk about this last week. In terms of the mechanics, how would Cameron get to the cattery?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the big question now. And hand up, I think I said on this show last week, and I've said all the way along, as early as last Footy Classified, I thought Cameron would stay. So it just goes to show, whilst we might think that we know, we really don't. And his decision ultimately is to go to the Cats on a long-term deal. Talk this morning that, Brandon Parfitt is the one that the Giants want as part of the deal. His management's come out and poured water over it. Not that his management will have much of a say, ultimately, if he has to get traded. But the Giants won't want to just stack up with picks. They've had so many picks in the last 10 years. They'll probably want picks and a proven player that can slot in to the 18. But look, the good news here, or the interesting news here is, we've got the Adam Saad deal lurking in the background between two clubs who hate each other and infamously are tough to deal with. GWS with Jason McCartney and Geelong probably even more so with Stephen Wells both have a great history of being guys that just get stuff done. So I think they'll both give a fair reconciliation of what they think Cameron is worth to each of them. And I think that deal will get done. But I think you can basically rule out it being compensation for free agency. It'll be matched and traded.
And also, to take it further, and what you said is absolutely right. The Cats have got history of being reasonable. A lot of talk is about Essendon, whether Dodoro puts on a huge or inflated price, and everyone goes about their negotiations all differently. But the Cats, Stephen Wells, has been reasonable, and you can take to the bank, boys, that Higgins will be there too, and that's why, as I think I said last week, I think they've gone cold on Crouch. Well, that's true, proven that way, because you're not going to be able to get three big fish in at the one period. I think Higgins complements them forward to centre and midfield, and then Cameron. Well, geez, that's as good a get as you're going to get in free agency, considering I think in his age demo he's the best in the comp.
And Tredders, that means that Crouch has chosen the Saints, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, that's the word around at the moment. And I could, as I said to you, I think last week, that Port's interest was generally from his manager calling Port Adelaide. And that got a lot of traction here in Adelaide because not many people have crossed the great divide between Port and Adelaide. But, Crouch on a long-term deal in the Saints midfield. Saints supporters would go, hey, we keep this guy fit. That's another added to the mix on the back of Bradley Hill, who wasn't brilliant this year, but you keep looking and adding to that list, then you go, this is a team that played finals. I would suspect that if things go right again next year, they might be on the improve again.
Just an update as the current affair crew rolls down to Geelong. We've stopped at the Avalon Roadhouse, gentlemen, so you might just be able to hear a little bit of clattering with the doors in the background. I think our sounder, Chris, has gone for a dart and a coffee, perhaps. Anyway, let's focus ourselves on the...
Smoke responsibly. Smoke responsibly.
I'm not shaking my head at the smoking. I'm shaking my head that he's actually getting out of the car and allowed to walk around and socialise.
Yeah, washed it down with an energy drink.
I think looks like they've got an icebreaker and a sausage roll for $5, boys.
Yes.
We could be onto something there. Anyway, let us talk a little bit about Saturday night. the grand final, the Cats and the Tigers. Let us lock in a winner, a margin, and a Norm Smith medalist each. Let's start with the man who's won a grand final at AFL level, Warren Tredrea. Your predictions?
Going to take the Tigers.
Yep.
I'm going to take 15 points.
Yes.
And I think selectors of the Norm Smith will be seduced by the fact that the man could win his third Norm Smith medal in Dustin Martin. He won't necessarily be best. He'll be very good, but won't be best. But he will get the votes.
They do seem to go for stories, don't they? Last year, Marlon Piggott received, I think, 3 votes from one Norm Smith nominator, despite the fact he didn't enter the field of play until the second quarter, which was quite surprising. But anyway, Sam, who do you pick?
This is actually the first time I've been asked this. This is pretty early in the week for me, so I'm on the fly. I think Geelong will win it. I think Geelong are peaking at the right time. I think they'll win by 10 points. And I think Patrick Dangerfield will go forward, kick 3+, and be the best player on the ground.
Oh, dear. All right. And I am also going to take the Tigers. I'm going to take them handily by 20. And if you've got Dusty, I'm going to go with something that I would just be amused by the response to, and that is a complete trolling effort to see Tom Lynch kicking a bag of 5 and being the best player on the ground.
And stomping on someone's head after he kicks his 5th.
Exactly right. Now, all year, as part of Talk of the Town, we've been running the Social Club, which is just pointing out some of the best examples of social media throughout the years. An envelope went out during the week. We all got mailed the winner. So I would like to nominate and push in what was the winner of the Social Club this year, Warren Tredrea, doing a little bit of side hustle with radio stations in Adelaide. Take a look.
I'm never going to be a good AFL footballer. Look over there! ...2004 acting premiership captain Warren Gary Tredrea.
That was an exceptional piece of social media. Surely that was the winner, Sam.
That was as disgusting as it gets, but unsurprising, to be honest, when it comes to Treaders. But
and unpaid for the record.
I think
goodness of the heart.
Outrageous.
I think, Seb, your love affair with great cricket, hence why I'm wearing my whites today, with one of the greatest Australian cricketers, one of the greatest all-time cricketers.
All time. Yep.
Take a look.
And I'll point out here, one of the greatest perfume manufacturers as well, Shane Warne, the 23 fragrance, just really has helped me at home with the wife. It's been a wonderful year. So now, Treaders, if that wasn't the winner and me and Warne, have you got a winner?
Yeah, well, I have. Normally, footy's about pie and beer and pizzas.
Yes.
Not our flog McClure. Have a look at this.
That is Sam at a very nice winery, obviously pre-pandemic.
Wow,
and he must have been very randy because I think he ate 3 dozen. So let's just say white cardigans, Worcestershire sauce, Kilpatrick oysters, fresh oysters, vino, and wearing a white cardi. You don't come back from that. I actually think right now we're entering trade period. If you're interested to take Sam McClure's spot next year, give us a call. Drop us a line. We won't take much.
I'm open to that. I mean, I've never actually, said that I wanted to be part of any of this. So, if someone wants to take my spot,
you too. We all got caught into that.
Just for the record, that there is me at my absolute happiest with the glass and an oyster at a winery. I'm done.
What? Well, we're open for options. Sam Oysters McClure, the chief football reporter for Talk of the Town. He's had a great year. He'll win lots of awards for breaking stories all over town. Thank you for your season with Talk of the Town.
Great stuff, Seb. We really enjoyed it.
And Tredders, you have won premierships, best and fairest. You've captained football clubs. But has there been a greater honour than being a panel member of Talk of the Town?
Oh, it's pretty good, but let's be honest, no, not really. But I do thank you, Sebastian, and I really appreciate the kind words Sam just said to say, well done, Tredders, you were good enough, had fun, but I don't care about him. We'll see you next year. Hopefully he's not back. I know you didn't. That's why I mentioned it. Quiet, please. End of the show.
Talk of the Town.